Welcome back to Can I Be Honest? We've got another full week of stuff to talk about. We have police in North Carolina talking about slaughtering black people and looking forward to that. We got falling statues and white Jesus. We got Bubba Wallace's fake news. And we got a voice of hope, voice of tomorrow. There's a whole lot to talk about. Juwan, how you feeling this week?
I'm feeling heavy, as usual. It's like, living in this space and having these discussions all week long, with the wide range of people is cool, but I really look forward to breaking some of this stuff down with you and hearing your perspective as well as some of the people that listen in to the show. I think what I'm looking forward to most is, talking to our guest today and the hope that I get from seeing the next generation of thought leaders and activists when it comes to this. So, ready to dive in, hear from some of these people. Remember, if you want to be a part of the conversation, you can leave a comment, but definitely you can jump on and, text the number, your question to the number below, 313-473-0499. What we'd like for you to do is let your friends know that a live conversation is going down right now. So go ahead and share it, invite them in, and get ready. Obviously, we got a lot to talk about. There's no shortage of subject matters in this space, and we want Ralph to tell you just why that is.
This is America.
I have a dream.
These are animals.
America preaches integration and practices segregation.
Why did you say Mexico?
A rising tide of discontent.
The South will rise again. I have a dream.
We have contrasting visions about what America is.
This is America.
So, Duan, where do you want to start this week?
You know what? Let's go ahead and tap plug into and give our quick thoughts on the Bubba Wallace situation. I know that it's one of those hot in the news lines for a while. As a lot of things, these stories go all over the place, and you never know where that stuff is going to turn next. But I know that he's been getting a lot of criticism.
So people are calling him Jussie Wallace. Yeah. What do you think about that? Is it reference to Jussie Smollett and the thing that he, his wild fabrication? What are your thoughts about that?
I think about something that you often say. I mean, when you talk about people are just waiting to pounce on people. Again, man, there's no humanity in our approach, right? It's like we all want it to be a false alarm, right? That's the desired outcome, is that it's a false alarm, right? We don't want dude to be in danger. But when you live in the reality that we live in, I got some hate message trolls on one of my Facebook pages today. I got a call as I was riding my bike before we got on the show saying, hey, we got some folks trolling us and saying some really go back to Africa type stuff. You know what I mean? What do you want to do with that? It's this
through
is
where did that come from?
Through one of our Facebook feeds, one of my business Facebook feed. And I was just it's crazy because you deal with that stuff, and I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that he hasn't reported, right? There's a lot of experiences that he's had that never made the news, that he just chalked it up, right? I mean, we go back to Tiger Woods, his experience as a golf, as the best golfer in the world, right? And dudes that are on tour with him saying things bringing up chicken references and eating chicken and stuff like that. That's stuff that somebody was stupid enough to say live and in front of a camera. All the stuff that you deal with in those spaces when the camera's not around, for him to be demonized for being nervous, you know what I mean, about that. I'm you know, it's par for the course. You know what I mean? For the Tiger Woods reference, right? It's par for the course. Like that is who we are at the end of the day. Like we really get off and we really feel like we're doing something well when we, you know, hit somebody really hard in that way. And it's just, I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't know why we, are sitting there waiting for an opportunity to hammer somebody over the head. And that's like, if we're talking size, that's like nobody's can hold their head up high and chest out saying that they don't do that, because people from all sides of the perspective like do that, and you're just waiting your turn for payback. So that's the frustration I have with these subject matters. Like my heart goes out to him. He's the person living this in real time. I know what it's like to be the only person of color in white spaces. And I know how uncomfortable that is. And I know the weight of that. I don't know what it's like to actually feel endangered in some of those spaces in real time. I haven't had somebody like put a noose or me see something that like looks like a noose. I don't know what that is, what that's like. I do know what it's like to, be a Black man in these United States, and how frustrating it is to have to tell somebody time and time again lived experiences that I've had when it comes to interactions with the police, or when it comes to, my 11th grade economics teacher telling me a very racist joke when I was living in Texas. Like, I have lived those experiences, and it's frustrating to have to share those to validate yourself, because you relive it when you share that stuff. So that's kind of like my heart goes out to him in the space. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I want to welcome everybody who's jumped on with us live. I got my cousin Erica. What's up? Elizabeth is back again. Josh, Mark, Gerald, Susie. There's a lot of people. I don't know if you can see the people on your page, but welcome everybody. We're talking about the Bubba Wallace scenario with him reporting this noose with the FBI investigation saying it's not a noose, and all the backlash that he's gotten from that. I think the other thing that's interesting, there's a couple other things that are interesting to me that I want to get into in a second. One is the fact that, so Bubba Wallace is part of the reason why they're not doing Confederate flags anymore at NASCAR, and that's a whole, I think that ties into what we're getting ready to talk about next. But the other piece of it is that there was recent, since then, so from the time that the FBI investigation went down to now, there's been a North Carolina racetrack that people are pulling back from because they were selling what they call Bubba rope. And you could take that in a lot of different ways. You could take, like, they're literally selling like a portion of rope and calling it Bubba rope. So you could take it as they're just mocking him. You could take it as they're selling this to kind of put in people's minds this idea of lynching. And I think depending on your perspective, you're probably more likely to take it one way or the other. I think for me, it is, and he's expressed relief in this, in the fact that it's not, to your point earlier, he has expressed relief in the fact that it wasn't a noose, that it was there, that is this garage pole thing. I think one of the things that we don't appreciate about each other enough is that my experiences in life help to create the lenses in which I view everything that comes across my path. And so for me, like, as a person of color in that, especially in that particular, like, where Confederate flags abound, and like people talk about it's interesting that people want to like not talk about like slavery was so long ago. Well, damn, the Confederacy was like 5 small years, and that was a long time ago. You guys still like want to wave the flag, so which is it? Are we done? Are we like, should we just leave this in the past or not? Like, you know what I'm saying? And so like, if this and this, like, to what the flag that we have now, this is a rebellious flag. like a rebel flag that people still want to raise, and call themselves patriots. So that, like, there's just like this kind of ironic dynamic happening here that like, look, we want, but there's still, like, he's being crucified for this kind of stuff. So this is the thing that I want to talk about, is that, like, really understanding and appreciating. I appreciate the lenses in which, like, being in that scenario, what you would see, like, okay, that's a garage, like, it's a pull chain, it's a pull loop for a pull rope for the garage. I completely understand. It makes 100% sense to me that he would view that as a noose in that setting, in the setting that we're currently in the United States. That makes 100% sense to me. So I just think that we need to pump our brakes a little more and think like, man, if you went in there in this climate right now, in that specific climate in the U.S., like, just like put yourself in his shoes. I just don't think we put ourselves in each other's shoes enough. And I think this is a great opportunity for that. I am disappointed by the reaction that he's been getting by the people that are taking this as an opportunity to just whatever, get their points, get their rocks off and whatnot. So, but I think the flags lead themselves into, the other thing that we want to talk about was the statues. I think those, we talk about the Confederate flags. I think that lends itself into the next topic of, like, there's some toppling of statues. People are pretty upset. Trump just passed an executive order about this. Honestly, I would love to see so we're holding on to these. Like, I'm curious about this. This is part of American history. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how does that, unless you wanted to jump in on the say something about Bubba.
No, I mean, I have many thoughts on that, right? I mean, like, Trayvon Martin's killer, like signs Skittles for his fans, right? Bags of Skittles. So, like,
yep. Talk about why that's significant. The Skittles.
So the reason the Skittles is significant is because that's what he was purchasing when he went to the store, right?
Trayvon.
So that Trayvon Martin, that's
yep.
what he had at the time when he was murdered. And I don't even want to say the dude's name because I don't want to give him any shine on this platform. But, like, that's how, like, sick we are. So when you talk about them selling these ropes, you know what I mean? Like, that's the dark place that people are willing to go to while we're, like, demonizing him and making him out to be a liar because he has a healthy level of paranoia, right?
Yep.
Like, so that's it, man. Let's dive into the statues. Yeah, you got me a little bit live, and it sounds like you live as well already. But let's dive into the statues. So, man, I don't care about the statues personally, right? It's
what does that mean?
Like, I could care less personally, but, like, when you have so many people that are crying out and saying, like, let's do, and here's why, right? Like, I'll tell you why it's so personal for me. So it's like, where do you stop, right? I think me and you was talking earlier. Somebody said you go, like, we're going to end up, we're a minute away from tearing down Mount Rushmore, right? And I don't care about Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. Like, Mount Rushmore is amazing. We took my youngest two children there to see Mount Rushmore.
Ben Shapiro said that. Ben Shapiro said we're 5 minutes away from tearing down Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, we took our kids there like 5-6 years ago. It's amazing. The one reason I wouldn't want to do that is because having a construction background, understanding and thinking about what people had to do to, like, pull that off, I'm like, ugh. But, like, I do not have the same level of affection towards what are the people that are labeled and called founding fathers of this nation that, many think is really great. You know what I mean? And I understand why people think it's great. I'll say this, right? So, like, my last name is Dandridge, right? So that name comes from Martha Dandridge's, like, father, right? So Martha Dandridge is George Washington's wife, right? So George Washington was Martha Dandridge's second husband, right? So like my family came from Virginia, right? So like my family was property to the in-laws, George Washington, one of the founding fathers of this great nation. So I don't have the same level of affection. When I hear George Washington, that's what comes to mind for me, right? Like somebody that was owned property that close to like me, right? So my children don't carry the name Dandridge. Like I wouldn't pass that name on to them, right? You know, so I say that to say that's the way, and I feel the same way about the statues and all the other things that come up under this subject matter, right? Like that's kind of where I am with it. And when I hear people speak out with the same type of passion about like removing them, I stand in agreement with them. I definitely wouldn't come out and speak out against that. I'll tell you what's said around my dinner table over the last couple of days. At my dinner table, somebody suggested that you topple them and leave them there. You know what I mean? Like you break them down and leave them there. That just like that as a piece of art. You know what I mean? In protest. So those are kind of my 2 cents. And I got a lot more thoughts, but I know we want to move along for the sake of time. So where are you at with that?
So I guess my question to you is like, what do you do about the history part? You know what I'm saying? Because they are so it's the complexity of my own humanity is part of it too. Like at the end of the day, when I die, there's going to be people that get up there and be like, this is who Steve was. And they're going to paint a very nice, eloquent picture of who I am. But that's not the totality of who I am. There's a whole bunch of like stuff that they're going to skip over and try to forget, like especially people that know me really well and have like gone through, especially people that have been around some of my darker years, darker days. Like there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff they just skip over. You know what I'm saying? But there will be some phenomenal things that I do in my life, and there will be some amazing impacts that I have on this world. And so that's my question is like, what do you do with that? And I'm not advocating for saying, but like, what do you do with someone like George Washington, for instance, who's like, I really, and I appreciate the perspective that you bring, because I think that's really important, because like when he comes up in my mind, it's like, oh, the guy, like you see him in the boat, this picture of the boat, like crossing the river to like, you know, and the stories that we told, they're not that's not the story. That's not the prominent story that comes to mind. So I appreciate that. But what do? Do you just like completely try to erase American history? Like, how does all this, like, how do you actually move forward with the complexity of it?
Yeah. So I would say, I love the way you tied it and made it personal and made it about you. So I'll make this commitment to you. If you go before me and they give me 2 minutes to go, I'll paint a more honest picture. I'll bring some balance to all the nice stuff that people say about you, right? And if you remember, right, I eulogized my mom, right? And one of the things I said is that, like, she was a complete person, right? Like, she was not, like, always an angel, right? She was amazing, right? Just like you said. And I think that the same can be said about some of these people that we celebrate. What we have, though, in this country is we have a history of not telling and giving an honest depiction of who this nation is. And if we don't have a prophetic voice there that's given the same platform that the other voice has, then I say we need to do away and start over from scratch. And then we say, okay, moving forward, let's tell the truth, right? Because, you know, the way the story is told, look, I mean, we grew up playing cowboys and Indians. The Indians were the bad guys. You know what I'm saying? It's like you be a cowboy was the equivalent of being the good guy, right? So, you know, I don't know how to make it more than that. But I just think that we need, I have many thoughts on that, and just us not being honest with the role that we play in like so many different things that's happened in this nation. Yeah, Sean's, I mean, I think that we mentioned Sean said that's what museums are for, right? Like throw those statues in the museum and let people go and visit them.
I actually really like that idea. I'm gonna no, I'm trying to text Stefan right now, but I really like that idea and see where he's at. We have a guest who really love this dude. This really stepped up. We got a 16-year-old that's taking really taking the helm of trying to navigate some of the protests in Detroit in a particular direction, and both of us have a lot of respect for him. I'm trying to see what's happening.
So it looks like Matt's
I love
what's
that
up,
idea.
Matt, Kenye, Aunt Cookie, Tawana, Sean, what's up? Thank y'all for joining us. Feel free to leave a comment and feel free to jump on if you have any questions. You can text them to this number. We'll bring you into the show live. The number is 313-473-0499. If you have some thoughts or comments on some of the subjects that you hear us discussing and you want to share them, you can text that number. We'll send you the link to jump in to the show. Yeah, so we'd love to hear from you guys.
Elizabeth said that the Cowboys were the bad guys when they played. I don't think that's typical, but yeah, the partly that might be part of your. I don't know if that relates to your heritage at all, the Latin background, but that would be a question. I really like the idea of the museums. I would love to actually see the government do something to kind of step in and recognize the moment and help us to, rather than saying like, hey, we're just going to arrest people. I would love the government to step in and be like, hey, let's take these, let's put them in a museum and let's put some context around them. And let's put here let's put a holistic pictures of the U.S. I think the whole white Jesus thing, what does that say? Statues shouldn't show up in a museum knocked over. Expound on that. I would love to see more about that. What you're saying, Jason?
Yeah, Jay, break down what you mean. Should they should show up in the museum at all, or should they show up in the museum like intact? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So Stefan said he's getting on now. Man, we don't even really have time to get into the white Jesus thing, but I kind of I'm not real pressed about that. So here's the thing that I think is important to say about the white Jesus thing. When part of what was really important for us to feel, for Europeans to feel okay about treating Africans the way that they did, is they had to dehumanize them. And one of the ways that they did that is they connected the European image to deity. So they said things like God is English, and they did a really phenomenal job, like top of the line job at getting inside people's heads and hearts, so that dude, it is okay for you to treat this guy, this woman like this, because A, they're not like you, they're not even completely human, and you are complete. God himself has ordained this, and in fact, Jesus looks just like you. And so I think that's one of the things that's really important for us to think about and really process as we think about this idea of the significance of white Jesus, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, or the just European-looking Jesus, period. So I'm not it's interesting, Marcus Garvey said to the Chinese, Jesus is Chinese. Everybody kind of paints him in their own picture. To the black man, he's black. To the white man, he's white. I think for me, I look at him as a Middle Eastern guy, so I look to Israel now and see what they look like, and that's kind of the picture that I have of them. I'm not pressed about if people take down the white and remove the white Jesus. That shouldn't the image that we have painted or crafted with our hands. There's actually scriptures about that. Don't make images of God, of deity, you know what I'm saying? And yet we are so people are super up in arms in this. They're not saying the argument is not let's get rid of Jesus, let's get rid of Christianity. The argument is let's get rid of this specific image that came as a result of Europeans trying to justify slavery, and the dehumanization of other people in the name of God.
Yeah.
So look, we need to know what we're actually talking about. And again, yeah, that's all. So I don't know if you want to respond.
So Jason said, stood up, statues are there for a reason. I got you. So I would say, yeah, we could do a whole show on like white Jesus. And
Stefan is here too.
I am, all right, we're gonna bring him on right after this thought. So I am like a follower of Jesus, and it's definitely some bondage associated to the way that I learned Christianity. It was definitely from an unhealthy perspective, and I had to do away with a bunch of that. And part of doing away with it was realizing that image that my grandmother had on her dining room wall that I would walk past every time I had to go anywhere in her house, that I believed was Jesus, because my grandmother was the most spiritual person that I had access to in my life growing up, right? So like if grandma says this is Jesus, this gotta be Jesus, right? So not understanding like how like unhealthy like that was within itself. The other problem was when you find out that there's no way in the world that was Jesus at all, like then you start to question, all right, what else
Everything
taught that was a lie, right? And why don't anybody want to have a conversation about the fact that we got all these pictures and these images in the church? Why, as soon as somebody asks that question, we're like, it does not matter, right? That within itself, but for the sake of bringing Stefan in, here's what I challenge everybody to do. Just Google images of God, right? And if it's not important, why do we have images in the first place? And why do all of them like look like white men, right? At the end of the day. So I would just challenge people to do that. If you're interested, let us know in the comments. We can do at least a half a show on this subject matter, because I actually love talking about this because of the unhealthy way that we've all been taught Christianity in this nation, right? So that's what I have, and I'll cut it off there.
Yeah, I think it relates. I think it relates deeper too. Malcolm X talked about the things that we did psychologically into the Black community, into like images of beauty, images of everything that like this psychological warfare, and it's on both sides, it's on all sides, and ultimately like it helps us to dehumanize each other. So
pop Matt's comment up, Ralph, real quick, if you can. History and religion have been curated to perpetuate that white dominance. We, meaning white people, not we, like me, have a version of history that isn't history. It is a made-up story, and we are post-racism. That we have fixed. I need my glasses on. Fixed all the problems. That we have fixed all the problems, and that America's dream is the same for us all. It's all been very carefully curated. I agree with that for the most part, Matt. I definitely, would love to have you jump on at some point, even if not today, to share some of that and unpack that some more with us. But without further ado, we got to get our guest in here. Excited to introduce you. You want to introduce him to everybody, Steve?
Sure. Stefan.
Where you at?
So Stefan Perez, the first time I saw this guy was when, like, I saw a little news clip. It was on Fox. It was like this: a 16-year-old helps lead people to safety, helps keep people safe, get people home safe during the protests. And it wasn't just the fact that like it wasn't some anomaly that he happened to be down there and people got home safe, but like this was actually like he was like a clarion call, like a voice that was like leading people in a particular direction to make sure that they were being safe, that they were peacefully protesting, that they got their voices heard, but yet everyone was able to, at the end of the day, make it back home to their beds. So we're super excited to have Stefan here. Stefan, thank you for being here, man. I appreciate it. Uh-oh, are you frozen?
Froze. So it looks like he's froze.
So
in the meantime, what I'd love to say, give some of my thoughts on Stefan as well. So I had a chance to meet him. I think it was a little bit over a week ago. And I've seen that some of the circle of people that he's surrounded by and some of the people that have influence in his life. And when I put that together, it made sense. What Steve just described, seeing him in action the way he did in a really high pressure situation where the protests were going into a more dangerous space, and seeing him show up and be a voice of reason in that moment. When I see the people that he's surrounded by, I was like, okay, it makes sense, because being able to carry yourself with that type of maturity and say something in a way that people will respond and change direction, like that takes a lot, right? Like that is not something that any and everybody can do, even if you care. I've seen footage of people trying to stop people from doing burning some stuff up, and people just like, well, the hell with you. You know what I mean? And they didn't respond. So seeing him be able to actually get to the heart of people in the very, like, this was shortly after the George Floyd video had went public and was being aired. So like the emotions that were happening in everybody, myself included, like to be able to penetrate the hearts in that moment, that is something that I wish we could bottle, because people that are in leadership would purchase that for a really healthy song.
Yep. He said his phone's acting up. So the mayor actually called him, and I know he's had. So the mayor called him while he was on live TV. You know, the politicians are great at figuring out opportunities to gain favor. But I will say this, though. I do know that since then he's had been able to have multiple conversations with the police chief in Detroit, other police chiefs, in order to start walking out some of these conversations and coming to the table. And the thing that I really appreciate about him is, at the end of the day, he wants people's voice. He wants everyone's voice to be heard. He has a deep care and a deep, like, he cares about the police too. And that's one of the things he said. And one of the things that we talked about is like, because I talked to him about a week ago too. It's like, look, man, like I realize that the officers are real people too. Like, it's not just about getting my friends home. It's not just about getting the people that came to like protest and give this message home. It's about getting everybody home. Officer Jackson, I want him to get home too. And I think when we can start like realizing that was one of the things, like my boys have expressed fear about the police. My boys are mixed. I'm white. Their mom is a black Jamaican. Happy birthday, by the way. So I have something.
Happy birthday,
special.
Simone.
I have something special for you when I get home.
This is a family show. But I mean, if you're gonna be honest, just be honest, though.
Hey, I want to welcome everybody. Feel free, if you want to be on the show, you can text the number and join us on with your family friendly comments. We've been talking about we talked about white Jesus, falling statues. We talked about the Bubba Wallace incident. If you want to talk about any of that stuff, feel free to jump on with us or drop your comments down below. Invite some friends you think might be interested. But yeah, like that's the thing. I think like he is kind of an epitome, I think, of the humanity that we need. And just at 16, like I'm so impressed with like his ability to carry on a conversation and with his genuine, like that's the thing. Like he wasn't, when I talked to him, there were plenty of exit points he could have had, but like he really was just, he was engaged and kept furthering the conversation, furthering the dialogue. And I think we need more of that. More people that's like, look, yes, like, man, I am for this message. I am for this movement, and I'm also for Officer Smith. You know what I'm saying? I also want to see him get home too. Like, we just need more people that aren't like just for their own camp. Like, I don't just care about like how people that think like me think, and like I don't just care about them, but also care about people that don't look like me, don't think like me, etc. So welcome. We've been trying to fill in the gaps while you've been gone. So welcome. You want to introduce yourself, Stefan?
Stefan, are you picking us up clearly?
It took me so long. My internet and stuff is acting up completely right now.
The internet's acting up. Can you pull the mic closer to your yeah, can you pull the mic closer to your mouth? That would help, I think.
My bad. All right. You can hear me now?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Yeah, something's going on. Like it's lagging at the same time, but I apologize. I think I can hear y'all now.
You're good. Just speak a little louder. So what, Dewan, you want to jump in with a question?
Yeah, so I guess the first question that we have is, what inspired you to be a part of the protest in the first place?
Okay, sorry, repeat that.
So what inspired you to be part of the protest? Well, like what got you down there? Like what inspired you to be there in the first place?
Okay, so I actually went to the protest on accident. I was supposed to go with my friends, but they didn't end up going, so I ended up just going by myself downtown. Yeah, if I say on certain news channels, you will see Stefan Perez, a 16-year-old from Southwest Detroit, took the Michigan bus downtown. Like, what you got? I say something about the bus, folks. But I went to the police station, and it was only people turning to 50, 200. It kept on rising, and when I got up on the stage, I'm a very charismatic type of person. So I get up on that stage with a little podium that they got in the in front of the headquarters, and they asked me to speak. So I started speaking, and the crowd started loving it. Like, I'm talking about like real stuff, like it's unfair that we have to deal with the systematic oppression that we deal on a day-to-day basis. And I was speaking from both a 16-year-old perspective, plus speaking of the movement, the stereotypical injustice that we all deal with, and I like gathered the crowd's attention. And I think just the fact that I was younger was like people were in awe already. So for me to like grab that microphone and lead people, of course it wasn't just me, because if I would just be a random 16-year-old walking down the street yelling myself. But it was all the people behind that helped me build up and show them, and it shows that we were it was more in depth to be heard, and I feel the way we did that with that situation, we're sitting at the table dealing with what we need to deal with higher ups.
He's freezing again.
So one of your main things has been to get people home safe. How have you, like, that's not necessarily, and to have a peaceful protest, to have your message be heard, that's not necessarily everybody who's downtown or wherever they're protesting. That's not necessarily their aim. How has your interactions been with people that's not their goal? Did you catch that?
So you're saying, sorry, I'm just trying to gather what you saying. How did it lead from to Southwest to downtown?
Well, no. So there's people. Your whole thing is get everybody home safe, peacefully protest, be heard, but keep people safe at the same time. And let's not destroy my. I already you talk about my city. You know what I'm saying? Let's not tear up my city. That's not everybody doesn't have the same viewpoint as you. Are there things that other people? How have they, like people that have a different viewpoint, like about rioting or whatever else? How have they responded to you?
I think there's a huge lag, Ralph.
Like yeah,
Okay,
a
there we go.
bunch. Yeah, I'm lagging.
All right, go ahead. You're good.
Okay, my bad. All right. Basically, we had people. You know, there's one thing we consistently say in a lot of the protests is like, oh, it's the outsiders coming in and messing up the city. Oh, it's this. You know, don't tear up the city. All these other types of things, and downtown obviously is like the Detroit. You know, you see downtown building. And instead of breaking down there's outsiders, which is there are that have came and things, but at the same time, I have to realize at one time I was an outsider, not out of the city or nothing like that, but I just got invited to a Chicago protest. And thinking about it, I'm not from Chicago, but if I go to Chicago, I will be an outsider. So you have to look at it. It's not just about the outside mentality. It's the mentality of, does somebody have ill intent? And by to say, sadly enough, we have ill intent from our own city. Like people just want to see it tore down, and it's a sad truth. But at the same time, it's truth. What do you expect? People deal with their emotional types of anger, sadness. Some people just stop and all these types of realizations. So basically, I didn't want to see the city tore down. I just want to see people get home, safe, and we can continue another day fighting. But how? At that time, my mind was like, how good would that be if I get everybody locked up? How good would that be if people are in hospitals because of rubber bullets, tear gas, the coming together, we try to that for a betterment.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's huge, right? I think about, just when I would see protests get out of hand at times, one of the things that I struggle with, myself, if I believe in something, then I'm willing to go to whatever level, things go to express my, belief in the cause. But I realize when you have protests, you have a lot of people that come out there. And to your point, the majority of the people that come out to protest, like they envision themselves going back home the same way that they came, the way they showed up. So when you have a few people that are making the decision to escalate things, right? Like they're making a decision for everybody that's in attendance. And that's one of the things that I really struggle with. Understanding the frustration, and I think the frustration that for me on the flip side is it feels like on a corporate level and a policy level, we respond more quickly to stuff being destroyed than we do life being destroyed. And I think that's an unhealthy signal that's being sent oftentimes. But I also can't help but think about when people are escalating things in protest, how much they're making a decision for everybody that's there. And that is really dangerous. Now, I just appreciated your leadership approach in that. And I hadn't had a chance to say this when we talked before, but I want to say it now. Thank you, right? I don't know if anybody I'm sure that you probably heard that, but I want to thank you. You know what I mean? As somebody that's born and raised in Detroit as well.
Did you have another question for him, Dewan, or you want?
Definitely. I would say the question that I would have for you is, what type of support structure do you have set up for yourself? Like I realize that sometimes this could be a lonely place, like an activist. But what type of support structure do you have set up in place for yourself? Like, who's feeding into and caring for you in the midst of all this, helping you process things, and you giving guidance?
So he actually just texted me and said it dropped him. So
okay, all right.
So let's finish out the show.
Yeah, let's do that, and let's commit to having him back on and figure out what that situation is for him. I can't take us in a different direction based on an experience I had today, if that's cool. So
what about the North Carolina stuff?
Yeah, let's finish out with that. Go ahead.
Is that? Do you think that I mean, we pushed that on the thing, so I don't.
Yeah.
If what you got that happened today is more significant, you make the call.
You know what? Yeah. So we'll go here. If you're cool with it. So it's interesting. So give a little bit of context. I live in this space. I have these discussions all the time. In different platforms, the space that I work in, like, I'm called on to have discussions like this all the time. What I try to do is shield my family from it. So I try not to kind of force it upon them, even though we have these conversations at home. Well, as I was leaving an event today, as I was leaving an event, my wife and I, someone recognized a shirt that I had on and asked some questions about it. And as they asked questions, it was not from a learner's perspective. It was from somebody that understood and knew what was going on and had some questions about the shirt. Now, the shirt had dates. 1863, it had 1943, it had 1967, and then it said now, referencing different years when there were riots that took place in the city of Detroit. And the person was saying that, 1863, well, there weren't even people in Detroit, right? And I think what part of the conversation that me and my wife had as we left was that, man, it's so frustrating, right? When white people, right, that, and I'll say this for the record, I don't know how long this person's history is with Detroit, but I've had a number of people learn some of Detroit's history and then assign themselves my teacher and run off Detroit history to me. And it's so frustrating and insulting. But I was wearing the shirt and he kind of didn't ask a question. It was more hey, this is what's happening, or, there was nobody even here in Detroit. And I'm like, I didn't even know how far to go. I didn't know if my wife was willing to stop and engage in that. I'm always kind of ready to have those conversations. And they went so many different places. But I think what I would speaking to is just kind of the heaviness and the weight of that. And I don't give myself enough time to have self-care when it comes to that. And my wife is probably way more well studied on these subject matters than I am, and she probably has a lot less questions about this stuff. But it went from authoritatively speaking about the shirt that I was wearing to look. I was look, no, there was definitely a riot here. beautiful thing is we have Google. I Googled it, showed it to him. That moved us along in that part of the discussion. But then it went to well, people, I remember 1967 and what that looked like, but, people moved out of the city because they wanted to protect their interest. And there was a lot of people that, didn't want to lose their wealth in their home that they had and didn't want to see that burn. So they moved out of the city, and that was his perspective. Now we're in a good space because hopefully, like, if you're open to, we can give you a really quick, like, lesson. So my wife said, look, we live in a part of the city that there was an affluent part of the city during this time. It was never under any threat of, like, being burned down. But the white people that lived there that moved out, they wanted to live in totally white spaces. So when Black people moved to the block, they started to move out, right? So I think, I guess the only thing I know I'm going on a tangent. I think, like, what I'd like to say and leave from this is, like, when we have these discussions, understand, like, and have an open mind. And I think I always want to be open to hearing others' perspectives. I think that I probably wasn't in that moment really trying to hear other perspective. I was kind of more like, yo, like, no, like, I'm teacher, you're a student here. You know what I mean? And leaving that and even talking about it now, like, I always want to keep that part of me in check because the arrogance is right there, right? Like, it's definitely there. And I do, like, see myself a certain way in these spaces. And because we haven't, in large numbers, been able to have nuanced discussions, that frustrates me. It's all like one or the other. And I think it's kind of like, a lot of times it's kind of a part of this and a part of that. The arrogance that I think he may have had without intending it, like, that stuff, I took it and ran with it. And I just want to be on guard and know that that's a potential, that's a possibility for me, even if somebody rubs me the wrong way, is, like, kind of what I want to point out.
Yeah, I think that's good, man. I think it's tough. I think it's you're being in I think in any relationship we have, in any conversation we have, when we have two very different different opinions, it's really difficult, really challenging to kind of keep the other person in mind and, like, not get caught up in your head or in your heart or whatever in ways that are unhelpful both for you and for them. But it's tough in these spaces specifically.
Yeah. So it does not look like we have anybody jumping on at the moment. Remember, you can jump in. We're kind of freestyling at this point. We're going to go into the next subject matter. But you can text 313-473-0499 if you want to join us and be a participation. You got to jump on quickly because I think we got like 7 minutes or less remaining. But you want to go ahead and throw out the next subject?
Yeah, this is I don't know how much I don't think we have enough time to get into it, but North Carolina police officers giddily talking about slaughtering Black people. And I think one of the things, as I was reflecting on this, one of the things I was thinking about is, like, these officers at some point played in a sandbox and played with G.I. Joes and watched cartoons and did all of these other normal things, played basketball and dodgeball and tag and whatnot. And the people that they're talking about too grew up, like, doing all of these same things, like having these normal, just like being a child, being a kid who parents put them to sleep, who wet the bed, who, like, all these, like, did like little annoying stuff, whatever it was, like went out and had races, like, you know, climbed trees, all of these things. And that's one of the things that I was thinking, just processing, is like taking these and really thinking, like, because I think at the heart of this, at the heart of what's happening here, is this, like, not seeing other people as human. Not only that, but like, I, from wherever I am thinking about what I'm going to do, or how, like, for me personally, it would be like how I'm going to respond, like verbally, etc., to somebody. But for them, like them actually killing people that they have had no contact with yet, fantasizing about somebody that they have had zero contact with, or maybe they have particular people in mind, or maybe it's a combination. But like the degree of sickness and mental health issues that are there, like just psychosis. And I'm not like, I don't bring up mental health to be like, yeah, it's just, you know, to like undemonize them. I bring that up to be like, there is a psychosis in that conversation that somehow between eating Cheerios with like in their, from a diaper in a high chair, to like when now where they are in life, something has gone very, very wrong for them to be able to like sit there and have these kind of conversations. And so that's, I think that as much as anything is what struck me about this, including the fact that like, and the other thing is just the peril of what it means to be in power and be in a situation where you have like life and death power over somebody, and where the law historically has been on your side and have these kind of thoughts. So it is some things like that we really need to work on figuring out, like on a broad level, that hits people in the heart and the mind and gets into some of that stuff before it manifests itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for bringing, that perspective and taking us to that place of trying to make them human. I appreciate that. I would say the temptation is to make it about, you know, these officers that were caught, right? And demonize them. That's what I'm tempted to do. But I think what I'd like to do is just talk about like America's responsibility when it comes to devaluing Black life, right? And then I want to talk about like how there's so many of us that are guilty of that. There's so many, like what those officers were doing. Like we have people that make millions of dollars to like produce music that says similar things, if not worse, right? Like, and we glorify them. They are heroes, right? Like they are in our playlist, right? So there is a deeper sickness that like comes like along with the devaluing. I think you talked about it a little bit earlier, like devaluing like Black lives. And like if we can dive into the root of that, and if we can realize that like that's like been taught to all of us, that then we can start to figure out ways to address it internally, like where it's in me. I know better than to say something that's stupid publicly and get caught saying it, right? But if, you know, I've been able to, if you grew up in this country and you've been able to avoid the teaching that Black life is not as valuable and is not worth as much as everybody else, if you've been able to dodge and avoid that, then you are a special kind of person. Because I don't know a lot of people that have been able to dodge that teaching. And I think that's kind of like where
I don't think a lot of white people would relate to that though.
Yeah.
And what I mean is that like I think the average white person that I know would say like I love Black people, but would still kind of end up, you know, Erica's question, how do you answer Christians who can't see that there's police brutality and racial injustice, even when there are clear examples like this? Like I think some of that is like they might, like, there's this sense to like disassociate that and these particular incidents with my own thinking and my own heart. You know what I'm saying? So I think I don't think a lot of people recognize what you're saying as being true for them.
I would say understanding that the thought of it. So there's a few things, and it's rough because like you got to do some homework to unpack some of this, and I encourage everybody to do it. But like killing Black people being illegal is, and I said this before, is something that's pretty new as far as the history of this country, right? It hasn't been illegal to kill Black people very long, right? So like to have that type of thought, like I can share stories, secondhand stories, but stories with you that if I share these stories, it will take you to the place where it happened, that I've heard people like give firsthand of like growing up in the South and living amongst people that would knowingly kill Black people, bury them somewhere on their land. And when they came around and issued a threat, you had to take it seriously, right? And I'm talking about somebody that's like, you know, it's like 65 to 70 right now. And there would be no ramifications, and everybody knew that, right? So, but it's deeper than that. It's like the teaching that it's not like the way that Black murders are investigated and solved. Like all of those things like are tied into the fact that it's not as important. Black life is not viewed as important as white life in this country or other, right, in this country. And that's a teaching that we've all suffered from. And we have to figure out a way to personally, on a personal note, and I'm talking about like me, like I was taught that. I was like trained in that teaching. And once I realized it, I had to figure out how to overcome it. And that is still a part of this journey, right? But if everybody says that it's just those officers, if everybody says that it's somebody else, and we don't do the you know, painful look in the mirror and say, how does this play out in my life? Like, how do I view things? How do I perceive Black life? Then we're going. I fear that we'll just continue to talk about this, and we'll point out these as isolated incidents, and the Dylan Roofs of the world will help us like feel good about where we are on a personal level. And if we continue to do that, and everybody does that, and there's no accountability personally, then it's really hard for me to be hopeful that we'll continue to grow. And we'll have to do just probably a show on that alone, because I know that there are people that'll be frustrated when we're talking about those officers, and I bring up like, you know, as a part of the story. I know that that's frustrating for people, but like there's a part of me that understands that there are people that work to address one, and there are people that work to address the other, and none of them seem to have large success, right? Like, you know, there isn't enough accountability, in my opinion, on the type of music that's produced. And it's like Black folk talking about and glorifying, like killing Black folk. You know what I mean? Like that, like, you know, and I know it's controversial to go there, and I know that like
no, we can go there. We don't have time to do that now. We could definitely get into that. You could put it like a whole.
We'll have to get into that another time. And like, there's a part of me that's like, yo, like that's an in-house subject matter that you don't invite everybody to. You know what I mean?
But that's why, and I was thinking about what you said. I don't know if it was last week or the week before about like having internal conversation. I think that, and I get that, and I think it makes sense. I think the problem is like the whole premise of this particular show is to be able to have conversations that we wouldn't normally have, so people can kind of understand, like, oh, you do actually care about Black lives, like, that aren't killed by the police, but by these other, that are, like, when you look at the stuff that Trump said about Detroit and stuff, like, you actually care about that. And I see that you care because you're talking about it, and you're not just like pivoting like politicians do and like everybody else wants to do, and talk about it. So yeah, I hear you, and I think that it is, but the hip hop conversation specifically is actually pretty nuanced and complex because of like who all is involved in both, making money from it, and who's like it's a very nuanced conversation. So.
Definitely. There's a reason that music is produced at the level that it's produced. Like there are people that benefit on a much higher level than the artists themselves, and there's an agenda because of. So we'll have to set another show up, kind of like go into that. But yeah, I mean, a part of it is letting people into a private space, because I think that this is a conversation that Black folk need to have with Black folk. But I feel like somebody has to be the first to be transparent and to deal with the embarrassment, right? Like, I'm embarrassed, right, that like I still have work to do when it comes to like valuing Black life. That's an embarrassing statement for me to make as a proud Black man myself. You know what I mean? But if I act like it's all good and if there's no work to be done, then, I won't grow. And if I don't grow, like, I'm a part of us, you know what I mean? Then we don't grow. So I want to invite everybody to be willing to do that work and be embarrassed and be uncomfortable, you know what I mean? And get pushback, right? I'm cool being corrected, you know what I mean? But know what you're talking about when you come to correct me, because I don't feel like wasting a lot of time like with people that think they know what they don't know. That's frustrating. So
how do you know when you don't know what you think you know, though?
You don't. That's the problem. That's what makes it frustrating. I'm sorry. Sorry for going on a tangent.
We gotta wrap up.
Yeah,
if you guys wanna, so we're trying to cut these down to an hour. We've been a little out of control the past couple of weeks. But yeah, if there are stuff, I appreciate Eugene. Eugene sent me a text, messaged me through Facebook this week with the topic he wants to see us discuss. So we will talk about this. If there are specific things that you guys want to see us talk about, love to, you can drop that in the comments here or shoot either one of us a messenger. We're gonna set up a page for this stuff to be kind of centralized so that we can post some other stuff as well. But I appreciate every one of you that have tuned in this week. Thank you very much. We'd love to have you on the show to get your input. We're very grateful for Stefan Perez, not just coming on the show, but for the work that he's doing in Detroit to keep everybody safe. Appreciate the heart that he has, the intellect that's going on. Like, I'm super impressed with him. As like, I was thinking about like my kids, and like, man, like when they get to be 16, like, is this the kind of conversations that they're going to have? Is this the kind of care? And I recognize that he's just a kid. And I'm sure like if you dig into like his life, like if you dig into any of his life, there's more than just that. But like just the presence of mind to be there, the maturity, I love all of it. There's some things we didn't get to, in the comments as well. So we'll look back at that stuff. Want to have conversations in the future that reflect the stuff that you guys are interested in. So appreciate you being here, Dwan.
Yeah, thank y'all for coming. Jason, I see you out there. The comments. Ramen C, Crystal, what up? See you jumping on there late as usual. You got your alarm. We love y'all. We hope to see y'all again next week. But we'll have a lot more to talk about. So there's never a shortage. And Ralph, tell them why.
This is America.
I have a dream.
These are animals.
America preaches integration and practices segregation.
Why did you say Mexico?
A rising tide of discontent.
The South will rise again. I have a dream.
We have contrasting visions about what America is.
This is America.